The objective of this documentary are to increase the awareness of society about the urban poverty issue that is currently happening in Malaysia and to provide all-encompassing knowledge regarding urban poverty that can be used for future benefits. Urban poverty is a set of economic and social struggles that are faced by the people in industrialized and well-established cities. When we hear the word poverty, we know that it's not a good thing, but matter of fact, this urban poverty problem is also happening in our country, Malaysia. In recent years, rapid urbanization in Malaysia has made urban poverty an increasingly visible phenomenon. It is expected that this rapid urbanization and industrialization will bring in rural migrants into urban centers, bringing along low incomes that will put a pressure on urban services, infrastructure, and the environment. According to Prof. Jayasuriya, the urban poor are people with a family of 4 who earn less than 2,000 ringgit a month and have less than 5,000 ringgit in savings. This can also be categorized as people who cannot survive 3 months without work. As we can see from this definition, it is a very concerning problem in our country. Even though many studies reveal that there was a downward trend in urban poverty incidences, which is from 25.5% in 1970 to 1% in 2012, Malaysia will also keep increasing their urbanization rate for the upcoming years, which will drastically increase the urban population. This significant increase of urban population in a short span of time will make the situation of urban poverty much worse. A continuous urban poverty problem would lead to many economic and social problems such as high living costs, crime, environmental deterioration, and unemployment. As we can see from this table, the incidence of poverty in urban areas of Malaysia was highest in the year 1970, followed by the year 1979. Even though it is showing a downward trend, incidence of poverty still exists in the urban areas of our country. The population migration from rural to urban areas, as well as the natural population growth, will also contribute to the increment of urban poverty. Such excessive urban growth leads to various escalating economic and social costs, including urban diseconomies, which will worsen the urban poverty problem in Malaysia.
The issues of urban poverty is a major problem for the development of a country. Even though this issue in Malaysia is still under control, but the goal of SDG to achieve 0% now poverty must be prioritized. According to Malaysian government, the urban poor are people with a family of 4 who earn below than 980 ringgit in Peninsula, 1,020 ringgit in Sarawak and 1,180 ringgit in Sabah. There are 3 main factors that lead to urban poverty, which are low level of education and skill, lack of job opportunities, and higher cost of living. First of all, low level of education usually occur due to lack of education system. Nowadays, employers need highly educated employees, skilled in operating machine, and expert in a particular field. As a result, many people who are low educated and have limited self-development skill are not accepted to work and leads to poverty. Next, the contributing factors to urban poverty is limited employment opportunities. The rise of rural-urban migration have contributed growing population of urban poor in the country. This is because in the city, people tend to get the secure employment and earn better income. However, there is a surplus of workers. Employees are forced to increase the level of eligibility to work, so for anyone who does not meet the criteria has to be unemployed. Another contributing factor to urban poverty is the higher cost of living. This is happen when the living cost generally tends to be higher in urban areas such as food, transportation, and housing are more expensive. Therefore, urban households require higher income than rural households to have access to basic amenities such as healthcare, children care, and children education. According to Minister of Women, Family and Community Development, Datuk Seri Rina Harun, The migration rate of urban population to rural areas in 2019 was 19.5% and 4.8% for rural to urban areas. Those are some of many factors of urban poverty in Malaysia.
For the second part, we will discuss about the differences between rural and urban poverty. First of all, before I start, I will briefly give the meaning on both poverty to give the overview of it. Rural poverty is poverty that is happening in rural area or countryside, or in Malay we can say pedalaman. For urban poverty, we define it as impoverishment that is happening among the city dwellers, or Malay we can say it as penduduk bandar. There are few differences of this urban and rural poverty. First, in terms of areas, as I said before, rural poverty happens in countryside area and urban poverty happens in city area. Second, rural poverty happens mainly because of low income of farm labourers, small farmers and fishermen who heavily depend on agriculture as subsistence. As we know, in Malaysia, a lot of rural dwellers are farmers and fishermen. In the other hand, for the urban poverty, it is occur because of impoverishment that is happening among city dwellers that is over the capacity of the urban area to offset the shortage. For the last differences, rural poverty is always being associated with the policy biases, such as the infrastructure facility provided by the government in the rural area are much lesser than the infrastructure that is being provided at the urban areas, such as roads, schools, and transportation. But for the urban poverty, it is always being connected to the environmental or health risk and high living expenses. For example, in the rural area, we can get a bag of rice with 10 ringgit, but in city, a bag of rice is offered by 20 ringgit, which is really burdening the city dwellers to cope with the cost of living. However, there is also similarities features upon both of this poverty, which is the complex access to public services in which both of rural and urban poor could not fully benefit. But condition of access might be different as both of poverty have different dimension, which is being discussed earlier. In Malaysia, the statistic in 2019 shows the poverty of urban population was at 3.8%, while rural poverty was at 12.4%. So, here are some Malaysian government action to overcome the unwanted percentage of both poverty.
The issue of urban poverty that happens in a country will definitely give various impacts to the people living in the urban areas and also the countries themselves. Urban poverty can affect the physical and mental health of the society. As they live in poverty, issues like no access to healthy food, poor ventilation and sanitation may arise. In worst cases, some of them might not have a proper place to live. For instance, they live under the bridge or at the building's corridor. All of this will affect their physical health as they may be infected by diseases like malnutrition, respiratory problems, and diarrhea. Furthermore, urban poverty can also give bad impacts to the education system of Malaysia. This happens due to some factors such as lack of funds, inadequate learning facilities, and improper house conditions. And due to our current situation, which is COVID-19 pandemic, this situation will be getting worse. This pandemic has forced people to stay at home and students need to have classes at home. So with inadequate learning facilities like electronic devices and internet, how will they survive? Students who are living in urban poverty will surely feel depressed and they will end up quitting from the study. Thus, this will surely affect the education system in Malaysia. As mentioned earlier, urban poverty can give impacts to the mental health of the society. So how does that happen? People who are surviving in urban poverty are struggling with many kinds of problems such as financial difficulties and unstable jobs, and this has somehow disturbing their mental health, thus will increase their stress level. This issue cannot be overlooked as it will lead to higher rates of crime and violence. Even though most of the states in Malaysia showed a decrease in crime rates, the fact that Kuala Lumpur, which is the state that contains most of the urban areas in Malaysia, has the highest rates of crime is undeniable. This statistic has proved to us that urban poverty gives a bad impact to the rates of crime and will definitely affect the reputation of our country, Malaysia.
The family economics is a key measure of a family institution's well-being. The overall earnings and how well the budgets are managed may be observed. Household earnings is classified as B40, M40 and T20 in Malaysia. They can also show the household poverty status. Most households are anticipated to encounter excess spending since they lack education on effectively spending money. Therefore, overspending can lead to poverty. The cycle of overspending leaves them poor, even if their incomes mean they are considered well above the poverty line. Living in urban areas need a lot of money to survive. They need to pay for house, transport, food, and even the basic needs of living will highly cost in urban area. However, there are things such as various facilities, such as multiple bank accounts, insurance, and saving plan causes households to easily trap in overspending, which gradually can lead to poverty. Hence, in this section, we will look into the composition of urban poverty based on overspending pattern in Malaysia using income classification. According to the research from Osman et al. 2020, they found that 8.5% of the population falls into overspending, with 42% of households belong to the B40, 39% in the M40, and the T20 is of just 10%. Of the entire monthly earnings of 91 million ringgit Malaysia, 54 million ringgit Malaysia were spent every month. However, the research revealed 1,027 families in B40, while 166 in M40 and 35 families in T20 were affected by exaggerated expenses. Some B40 group spend more than M40 and T20. From this figure, we can see that most of B40 households overspend their money rather than M40 and T20. Therefore, it can be concluded that most B40 who live in urban areas suffered poverty, followed by M40 in the second place while T20 is the last. It is undeniable to say that the income inequality is one of the reasons why B40 needs to overspend their money just for basic needs.
Based on all the discussions, urban poverty is an alarming issue that is happening everywhere around the world. Thus, actions must be taken in order to handle this issue.